Hello, friends. Welcome back to the While We're Waiting Hope After Child Loss podcast. I'm Jill Sullivan, your host and one of the co-founders of the While We're Waiting ministry. As you're listening to this episode, we've just wrapped up a While We're Waiting weekend here in Arkansas. Brad and I had the opportunity to facilitate this one along with Mark and Jennifer Martin, and it was such a blessing to meet these dear moms and dads and to hear the stories of their precious children. I personally learned so much from these folks, and as always, I'm so thankful for the opportunity. Remember, all our retreats are free, and you can get all the information about them on our website at www.whilewe'rewaiting.org. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming my new friend, Heather Oden, to the podcast. Heather wears a lot of hats. She's the executive director of a nonprofit called Light Up the Dark, a worship leader in her church, the wife of a fifth-generation farmer, and the mom of 5 children. Today, she joins us to share the story of her son, Jacob. Jacob was an athlete, an encourager, and a young man with a remarkable gift for noticing people who were hurting and speaking life into them. But on August 3rd, 2016, Heather's world changed in a single moment when Jacob was killed in a car accident at the age of 15. In this first half of our conversation, Heather introduces us to Jacob and shares what those early days of grief were like after losing him so suddenly. She talks honestly about the shock, the questions she carried to God, and the unexpected ways God brought comfort in the midst of unimaginable pain. Here's my conversation with Heather Oden. Hi, Heather. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to our chat. Let's get started by giving you the opportunity to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you're from and what life is like for you there.
Okay. Well, I am from Sterling, Kansas. I am married to a farmer. He's a 5th-generation farmer.
Wow.
So we're heavy in the trenches of, crop rotations and cattle. And we used to have bison for a while, and just all the things that farming entails. We have 5 kids who are not kids anymore.
Uh-huh.
So we have a son and daughter-in-law who live about an hour and a half away, and the rest of our kids are either married or close to married, and we have 2 grandchildren, 1 on the way. So that's what family life is like.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like a very full family life.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's good. I also am the executive director of a nonprofit. So that takes up a lot of my time, and I love it. And I am the worship minister at our church. So those are the things that I do with my time outside of family.
Yeah. You don't have a lot of extra time, doesn't sound like, with all of that going on.
They're all good things. I love it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we're here today to talk about your son, Jacob. Take a few minutes and tell us about him. Help us get to know him a little bit.
Well, he was number 2 in the birth order. Mm-hmm. So he had an older brother, and then he had a younger brother and a younger sister. He was a really smiley baby. Something that I knew I would never forget about him was as a baby, he would lay on a blanket, like if you put him on the ground, and he would smile, but he would smile so big that he would shake his head back and forth. It was just so big. And I remember telling my mom, it's like he's seeing things that I'm not seeing. He's just so, so happy. He was an active kid. He loved sports, mainly sports. He really loved sports. He was an encourager, and he had a deeply compassionate heart and was extremely aware and intuitive, aware of other people and intuitive of people's emotions and things that they might be thinking, how different circumstances affected them. And I think in some instances, he really didn't know what to do with all of that, awareness. I think at times it kind of kind of weighed him down a little bit. And when he was in junior high, he went through kind of a season where he really did struggle with, I think, bearing the weight of a lot of things that he was seeing and hearing, and probably a little unsure of how to deal with that. And also just the expectations that he felt like he was wanting to live up to. And so he went through kind of a darker season, and in that time really found meaning in one of the things that he and I would do. I encouraged him to find the people that God was putting in his life that he admired, and then really reflect on why he admired them, what gifts it was that they possessed that would maybe be why they were catching his attention. And after he started doing that, it just started, there was a light that just kind of came on, and he became just a really encouraging person for other people. And so just he started seeking out other kids who struggled in different ways. It wasn't necessarily even the same way that he was experiencing, but he would seek out, other kids if they were athletes and they had an off game, or if they were friends and they just needed to talk, or man, he was even that way, around the house, and just became extremely encouraging.
Yeah. That's a really, really special gift for a young man to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about that, just thinking about watching him encourage other people. I am reminded, and I really hadn't made this connection until right now, that's when he would smile his biggest.
Sure.
I could just see him yelling, you got this, and just seeing his face. Yeah.
I love that. That's so unusual for a young man. It sounds like something he probably learned from you.
Well, I will tell you that we think we're teaching our kids things. And I think I learned as much from them and from parenting them, or more maybe, than what I taught them. And I'm grateful
Sure.
for all of it.
Yeah. And I think that's something we can all probably say about our children. I know I learned a lot more from my children than maybe they even learned from me. And that's
Right.
a good thing. That's
Yeah.
a good thing. So Jacob is a good, solid biblical name. Is there a story behind why you chose that name for him?
Actually, I kind of wrestled against it because of the way that the biblical historical character
Sure.
was deceptive. But when I was looking up the meaning of the name, I had this book that, those are really popular when you're pregnant. And so you're just like leafing
Yes.
through them and looking through, what does this name mean, and what scripture goes with this name, and what spiritual connotation goes with this name. And I remember it being Overcomer. And so that to me really stuck. And my husband and I really liked that name. So that's why we ended up staying with that.
Mm-hmm. That's a good reason. I love that. So prior to Jacob's accident, we're going to get into that in a minute, but prior to that, you had already experienced God's calling in your life in a unique kind of way. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Okay. I had come up against just a frustration in my life. I felt like I would find myself in similar situations that I really couldn't put my finger on, but I would have the same, I would call, exaggerated response internally to some of these similar situations. So I remembered praying about God, or praying to God, just saying, I'm so frustrated. I feel like I'm hitting a wall and I can't see the wall. Like it's an invisible wall. Just make me all yours, whatever that looks like. I don't know. Like I can't get past this. And I started to repress memories that I had started to surface. And in the surfacing of those memories, I was then led on a healing journey of my own, dealing with a violent assault situation when I had been a teenager. And then as I worked through the healing journey of that, I really did feel like God was saying, we're going to change now what you're doing with your day, and I want you to speak life into people. And I kept seeing this phrase, light up the dark, light up the dark, light up the dark. So I started the organization, Light Up the Dark, and we have some different services that we now offer. But at the time that we started it, it was mainly around generally bringing hope to people. We did not have any programming money, and I was praying deeply about what direction I knew I was supposed to do it. That part of it was not a question to me. I just wasn't sure what the specifics were, and I wasn't interested in running out ahead of God. So it all kind of came together one step at a time. And the first part of forming the organization, Jake knew all about, and he was very passionate about speaking life into people. And I remember having a conversation with him about 3 months before the accident. He was finishing up his freshman year in high school, and we were talking about what direction he wanted to go with classes and where he might kind of want to land at college or what major. And he wasn't sure. And I said, what about like sports medicine? I know you love sports. He's like, I'm not really sure about that. And I said, what would be really cool is if Light Up the Dark got big enough that when you graduated college, you could come back and work at Light Up the Dark. And I can still see his finger pointing at me from across the living room. And he said, that's what I would do. That's what I would do.
Wow.
And in a way, we kind of work together now.
Sure. Now I'd like to shift our conversation a little bit to what happened with Jacob and JJ in August of 2016. Can you take us back to that time and what your family experienced?
Okay. So it was August 3rd, and I was supposed to take my daughter to Oklahoma to spend the weekend with my parents and one of her cousins. And JJ, Jacob's older brother, and Jacob were getting ready to go to work. Jake and a friend of his had formed their own business where they would rogue for farmers, which is where you go pull weeds. Terrible work. Like, it's sweaty and hot. It's not something I would want to do. Yeah. But they had a bunch of high school students, including Jake's older brother, that worked for them. And so they were going out to rogue. And so before I left, they both, headed out the back door, and we said, I love you, and I'll see you tonight at dinner. And then Caitlin and I got in the car and headed toward Oklahoma. And it was 11:21, and I got a phone call from JJ's phone, and all I heard was wind. And I said, JJ, are you there? JJ, did you mean to call me? Did you mean to call me, bud? And I thought maybe he was roguing or something, So I hung up the phone. And then I would say about 10 minutes later, 10 or 15 minutes later, I got another phone call from him. And this time he was on the phone. And he said, Mom, Jake and I were in an accident, and I don't know if he's okay. I don't know if he was breathing.
Wow.
And I'm so grateful to God for that first phone call, because it was like a little gift in a way of God the Father saying, this is going to be hard, Mom. Mm-hmm. And I just want you to know what time I'm bringing him home.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wonder, because you were there when he came into this world, and it was not something that God had to do.
That's right.
And so I was grateful to have that gift that he allowed. because what happened was JJ and Jacob had been on their way home in a little pickup that we let them drive around. They were coming home for lunch, and they were coming up on a blind intersection. And JJ said that he heard a voice in his head say, "You're going to want to buckle up." And both of the boys have been taught since they were little to buckle up every time they got in the car. And we had been on a vacation about 3 weeks before the accident, and I could feel Jake moving behind me more than I thought he should have been able to. And I said, "Jake, are you buckled?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Jacob, to go to buckle up. You are not allowed to be in a car without buckle." So they knew. Anyway, I guess they both had gotten in the pickup and had not buckled up. And JJ said he heard this voice inside of his head, not like a,
Right.
but "You're going to want to buckle up." And he said, "I've often wondered if Jake heard it too, you know." Anyway, there was a man driving a car coming from the corner they could not see. He was high on a couple of different substances, and he hit the boys, T-boned the boys' pickup. The pickup spun and flipped, and Jacob hit the windshield, and then his door opened, and he was ejected from the pickup. JJ was wearing his seatbelt, and so the pickup landed right side up. And he said when he looked to his right, Jacob was no longer in the truck, but he said, "Mom, I had my phone in my hand." He said it had been laying beside him on the pickup, and in all that spinning, and I don't know, like that, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
But anyway, his first thought was to call me. So that was probably the first phone call.
Sure.
And then he realized, wait, I need to not call Mom. I need to call 911, which is what he did. So he went over to be with Jacob and walked his brother home.
Mm. Oh, I can't imagine what that moment was like for him.
Mm-hmm. I have such mixed feelings because there are things that when they cause your kids pain, you want to be able to take that from them.
Sure.
But I'm grateful for his bravery, that he was there with his brother,
Yes.
and that
Yes.
Jacob had his brother there with him.
Yes. Yeah. That's a gift, really, a gift from God.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So our stories are different in that my daughter Hannah died from cancer, and we had some time to prepare. We knew that short of a miracle that she would be leaving us and going to heaven. And so we had that opportunity to say our goodbyes and pray and all of the things leading up to that time. So it's hard for me to imagine you're just having a normal day. Everything is fine. Your boys are out roguing. And all of a sudden you get that first call, which was confusing, and then that second call. What were those early days of grief like for you when you had no preparation for what was coming?
Yeah, I talk about that being the day that our world cratered.
Yeah.
Because it just came out of nowhere. I've prayed often about, what were my last words? And what I remember saying was, "See you tonight at dinner."
Yeah, sure.
Love you. See you tonight at dinner. And I remember in those first, I would even say months, I caught myself even into a year later having this feeling around 5 o'clock or 5:30 at night where I was looking for something and I didn't know what. And it was that expectation of that's when he's supposed to be getting home from practice,
Sure.
just keep waiting for him to come home. Yes. So a lot of disbelief is not the word I want to use. Shock.
Yes.
Shock is a better word.
Mm-hmm.
And uncertainty about what life is even going to look like, and how I can even get through the next hour.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
yes. So that was a lot of what grieving looked like. It was a lot of talking to God.
Yes. And what were your conversations with God like at that point?
Asking for, gosh, Jill, I don't even know for sure exactly what I was asking for. It was just like a big ask. Is he okay? Does he know I love him? One of the prayers I prayed just within the first 24 hours, I remember asking God. I didn't even know if I had the right to ask, but I felt like, God in his heart understands all of the messiness of everything.
Yes.
And so I remember saying to him, Jacob, it had been about a year prior to the accident, or maybe a year and a half, had expressed to me that he was having doubts in his faith. And so then I was saying, gosh, God, on the outside, it looked to me like we got those things dealt with and resolved, but did he? Is he okay? And another just unbelievably compassionate moment from God came the next day. John and I decided to go to meet with the football team, because it was, it just impacts everybody. Nobody's expecting it. And so when we got back from meeting with the football team, we were walking in, and I had a friend who had been staying with my kids, and she said, I want you to hear this song. There's something in it that I think you need to hear. And she didn't know what it was. She's just like, I think I'm supposed to have you listen to this song. And it was his basketball playlist. He'd made a playlist, and Cody said the same thing. Jake's younger brother. He's like, you need to hear that. You need to listen to this song. So it was, I'm Good by, I can't remember. It was a Christian artist, a rapper. But in the like one of the last verses, it says, and this is what perked my ears up, I'm Tebow in the fourth quarter, but I didn't hear Tebow. I heard T-boned. And so my ears, like, I just perked up. I'm Tebow in the fourth quarter with God as my coach. Tell my mama I was good when he carried me home.
Oh, wow. Just what you needed to hear.
Just what I needed to hear.
Yeah. God is so good.
He is so good. He's so good.
Yeah. And like you, I had to walk through all of those high school things that go on after your child dies, the prom, the graduation.
Yes.
Oh, and those things were so hard.
Yes.
How did you deal with those?
Oh, I don't know, with tears.
Yes.
Know, there was a lot of those kids, his class. Gosh, it's just really great souls. And they showed so much love to us, and I was so happy for them. It was never a thing where I did not ever feel any feelings of, why isn't he still here? And I think that probably would have been a normal thing to feel, a normal questions to ask. But I had experienced a miscarriage before, actually 2 miscarriages. And kind of in my healing journey with those, God made it really clear to me that we are all his babies. And so when he gives us one of his babies to care for, they're still always his baby. And so on the day of the accident, at a point I knew before we got home, because I was 2 hours away by the time. I hadn't made it all the way to Oklahoma City, but I had to turn around and come back. And some of our friends had lovingly arranged for somebody to meet me. A couple different people kind of took me, cars and my daughter on the way back to Sterling. And I just knew at that point. And I kept hearing inside my mind the scripture, all the days of my life were written in your book before one of them came to be. Mm-hmm. All the days of my life were written in your book before one of them came to be. It just went around and around and around in my head. And it was comforting because I knew he was saying he was always my baby. He's mm-hmm. still my baby. All of his days were written before one of them came to be. That's right. So it was another piece of comfort.
Absolutely. That scripture to me is one of the most comforting scriptures in the Bible.
Yeah.
That these things that happen to our children don't catch God by surprise.
No,
He knows. Don't. Yeah.
Yes.
And that
He's
to me
with
is very,
them every step.
Yes, exactly. That to me is very reassuring. As we close this first half of my conversation with Heather, I'm struck by how faithfully God met her in those early days after Jacob's death. The shock was overwhelming, the questions were endless, and yet again and again, God reminded her that he was near, that Jacob was his child first, and every one of his days had been written before one of them came to be. Next week, Heather returns to talk about what happened after those early days. We'll discuss the complicated journey of forgiveness, how her grief has evolved over the nearly 10 years since Jacob went to heaven, and the incredible ministry God has built through her nonprofit, Light Up the Dark. She'll also share some beautiful stories of God's encouragement along the way. As always, if this episode has encouraged you, I would love for you to share it with another grieving parent who might need to hear it. You can also help others find the podcast by leaving a rating or a review wherever you listen. It really does make a difference. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to sharing the rest of our chat with you next Wednesday.